At 82, I've come to understand many lessons about life, yet there remains one choice I profoundly regret: moving into a nursing home. At the time, it seemed like the perfect decision. My family encouraged the move, assuring me that I'd receive all the care and comfort I needed. I trusted them, but once I arrived, I discovered that the reality was nothing like I had envisioned. I know many of you might be considering this option for yourselves or a loved one. Perhaps you feel it's the safest decision, or maybe you've been told it will simplify life. However, before you take that step, I want to share 6 things I wish someone had warned me about prior to moving in. The truth is, life in a nursing home isn't solely about convenience. It transforms every aspect of your existence. And once you enter, leaving isn't nearly as simple as you might expect. Stay with me until the end, because some of these lessons may catch you off guard. And if you know someone weighing the decision of a nursing home, this message might be exactly what they need to hear before making such a life-changing move. Let's begin. Regret 1: losing my independence. The most jarring shock after relocating to a nursing home wasn't the small room, the fixed meal times, or even the unfamiliar faces. It was the stark realization that I had surrendered control over my own life. Before moving in, I had my own routines. I chose when to wake up, when to eat, and how to spend my day. I could go for a walk whenever I pleased, cook my meals, or simply sit quietly in my favorite chair with a book. However, once inside the nursing home, I soon recognized that my time no longer belonged to me. Everything was dictated by a schedule that wasn't mine. Breakfast was served at a specific time, regardless of whether I was hungry, and lights out was enforced at a set hour, even if I wasn't ready for sleep. If you wished to take a walk outside, you might have needed permission and likely had to wait for someone to assist you. Even basic decisions, such as what to eat or what to wear, began to feel like privileges rather than everyday choices. I recall my first week there. I woke up in a bed that felt unfamiliar, reached for the book I had been reading at home, only to be struck by the realization that this wasn't my home. My books, my favorite chair, and the little comforts I had spent years curating were gone, replaced by sterile walls, a bed I hadn't chosen, and a lingering feeling of loss. I was no longer the one in charge of my life. And once you surrender your independence, reclaiming it becomes nearly impossible. You gradually adapt, because you must. You cease arguing when they dictate what's for dinner. You stop asking if you can go for a walk at will, and you learn to fit into their system. Yet, in doing so, you begin to lose yourself. If you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself if you're ready to relinquish those small freedoms that define your life, because once they're gone, you might miss them more than you ever imagined. Regret 2: feeling forgotten. One of the toughest realities about moving into a nursing home is coming to terms with the fact that the outside world keeps moving while you're left behind. When I first arrived, my family reassured me that they would visit often, and I believed them. In the beginning, my daughter came by once a week, and my grandchildren visited on weekends, which made me feel connected to my previous life. But as the months passed, those visits became less frequent. My daughter began to call instead of coming in person, and my grandchildren, caught up with school and work, started missing visits. Holidays proved to be the hardest time. Everyone promised they would come, yet plans always seemed to fall through at the last minute. Suddenly I found myself sitting alone in a common room watching other residents gaze at the door, hoping that today might be the day someone remembered them. It wasn't that my family stopped loving me, it was simply that life got in the way. When you're not around every day, it becomes easy for people to assume you're fine, that you're adjusting, and that you don't require as much attention. The truth is, the longer you stay in a nursing home, the easier it is for people to forget just how much you still need them. I remember one evening, sitting in my room with my phone in hand, hesitating over whether to call my son. I didn't want to impose or remind him that I was here waiting for a visit that might never come. I put the phone down and it hit me. This was my life now, watching the days pass, hoping someone would remember to include me. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself if you're prepared for loneliness. Because no matter how deeply your family loves you, once you're out of sight, it's alarmingly easy to slip out of their minds. Regret 3: losing my sense of purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I assumed I was merely changing my residence. I hadn't realized I was also altering the very reason I lived at home. At home, I had responsibilities, routines, hobbies, and a reason to rise each morning. Even simple tasks, watering the plants, making my own coffee, tidying up my space, provided me with a sense of purpose. In the nursing home, however, those daily rituals vanished. Meals were served to me, cleaning was handled by someone else, and the plants were no longer my concern. At first, I convinced myself that it would be nice to finally relax. No more chores or responsibilities, just rest. But after a few weeks, I sensed something was missing. The days felt long and stretched out, filled only with waiting. I noticed the same in other residents. People who had once been energetic now spent their days sitting and staring, simply waiting for time to pass. I observed a man named George, 84 years old, who had spent his life as a carpenter. At home, he was always busy fixing things and building projects in his garage, but in the nursing home, there were no tools, no projects, nothing for him to create. I watched as he slowly let his once strong, skilled hands rest idly in his lap, and he confided to me, "I feel useless," a sentiment that resonated deeply with me. When you no longer have something to care for or work toward, life begins to lose its meaning. The mind slows, the body follows, and soon you start to feel like just another resident in a place where time moves, but nothing truly changes. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself what gives your life meaning, because once you move in, discovering a new purpose isn't as simple as merely passing the time. It's about fighting to hold on to what makes you feel alive. Regret 4. Declining health faster than expected. Before moving into the nursing home, I was doing reasonably well for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still manage my daily activities, take walks, and prepare my own meals. I had my routines, grocery shopping, morning stretches, and even simple walks around the house to keep my legs active. However, once I moved in, everything changed. At first, it appeared that I was simply taking it easy. Meals were delivered to me, and I no longer had to stand in the kitchen to cook. If I needed something, I could press a button and receive assistance. What I hadn't realized was that the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. I started moving less, my legs became stiffer, and I found myself sitting far more often. Soon, rising from a chair became a major effort. The muscles I had worked so hard to maintain were fading away faster than I had ever anticipated. And it wasn't just my own experience. I saw it happen to others as well. People who once walked independently began relying on wheelchairs, and those who were once self-sufficient now required help with tasks they had never struggled with before. The more assistance we received, the more we seemed to need. I remember my neighbor Alice, an 81-year-old woman who was vibrant when she first arrived. She used to take daily walks around the facility, insisting that she wasn't going to slow down because of her age. Yet after a few months, I noticed that she wasn't walking as much. Eventually, she transitioned to using a walker and then a wheelchair. One day she looked at me and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I've aged 10 years in just a few months." That encapsulated the experience. When you stop using your body, you begin to lose it. And in a setting designed to make life easier, it's all too simple to forget that movement is not merely about convenience. It's essential for survival. Had I known how quickly I would lose my strength, I would have fought much harder to stay active, even when I didn't feel like it. If you're contemplating a nursing home, ask yourself whether you will still have the drive to keep your body strong when everything is arranged for you to take it easy. Because once you slow down, regaining your strength isn't as easy as you might hope. Regret. 5. The loss of privacy and dignity. One major aspect I hadn't fully grasped before moving into a nursing home was just how much privacy I would forfeit. At home, I had my own space. I could close my bedroom door, enjoy silence, and do things on my own terms. In a nursing home, however, privacy becomes a scarce luxury. From the moment I arrived, I felt as though I was under constant surveillance, staff moving in and out, scheduled room checks, and shared areas where solitude was rare. Even mundane activities like getting dressed or using the bathroom often required assistance. I understand that the staff were merely fulfilling their duties, but accepting help for tasks I had always done independently was incredibly challenging. I recall my first week, struggling with the idea that I now had to ask for permission to do things that once came naturally. If I wanted a shower, I might have had to wait until someone was free to help. If I needed to use the restroom, sometimes pressing the call button meant a longer wait than I liked. Even meal choices were restricted. If you didn't fancy the day's menu, there was little you could do about it. Then there was the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room, and sharing a space with someone you didn't choose can be frustrating. I was fortunate enough to have a kind roommate, but I heard many stories from others who were not as lucky. Some had roommates who were noisy, unclean, or even struggled with cognitive issues that made sleep nearly impossible. No matter how much you try to make your room feel like your own, it never truly belongs to you. Dignity is a precious thing to lose, and I never realized just how much I would have to give up until I was already there. When people knock without waiting for your answer, when you're addressed like a patient rather than a person, when your daily routines are imposed upon you by a schedule you never chose, it changes you. You start feeling less like yourself and more like just another name on a list. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself if you're ready to sacrifice the privacy and control you've enjoyed your entire life, because once they're gone, reclaiming them is a monumental task. Regret 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I convinced myself that it was only a temporary measure. I'd try it out, see how it went, and if I didn't like it, I could always return home. What I failed to realize was just how difficult it would become to leave once I was inside. In the beginning, it seemed straightforward. If I wasn't happy, I could simply go back home. But home wasn't the same anymore. My house had grown empty, and maintaining it from afar became an overwhelming challenge. My children had already begun to make changes, selling items they assumed I wouldn't need or even considering renting out the place. When I brought up the idea of returning, they hesitated, questioning whether I could truly manage on my own and suggesting that it might be safer to stay. Moreover, after months of living in a place where I no longer had to cook, clean, or even walk far, I found that my independence was waning. I was no longer as confident in my ability to live alone, and that fear kept me tethered to the facility. I met others who had experienced the same predicament, people who initially thought they'd try a nursing home for a short period, only to realize that leaving was far more complicated than they'd imagined. The longer you remain, the harder it becomes to adjust back to life outside. Some even lose the option entirely once their home is sold or their savings are exhausted by the costs of care. That is the truth nobody mentions. Moving in feels like a reversible decision, yet for most people, it isn't. The nursing home gradually becomes your entire world, and before you realize it, the life you once knew begins to feel like a distant memory. If you're thinking about a nursing home, ask yourself if you're ready for the possibility that once you're in, leaving might not be as simple as you hope. Because once you settle in, the barriers to leaving, whether they are financial, physical, or emotional, can be far more formidable than you ever expected. Final thoughts. Looking back, I don't regret growing older, but I do regret believing that a nursing home was my only option. I entered expecting comfort, safety, and an improved quality of life. Instead, I found a world that gradually stripped away my independence, my privacy, my sense of purpose, and even my identity. Does this mean all nursing homes are inherently bad? Not necessarily. There are those who truly require the level of care they offer. However, before making that decision, think carefully about what you might be sacrificing, because once you move in, life will never be the same. If I could do it all over again, I would have fought much harder to remain in my own home, explored alternative ways to receive help without giving up my freedom, and ensured that I truly needed to be there before making such a permanent change. For anyone facing this decision, I hope you take the time to ask yourself, is this really what's best for me, or is it merely the easiest option right now? Because the life you have today, your routines, your independence, your choices, is worth preserving for as long as possible. Thank you for joining me today. I'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment sharing one thing you learned and how you plan to use it in your own life. Your thoughts are important, and reading your comments gives me great motivation and encouragement. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe, and share, as your support enables us to continue creating meaningful content to inform and inspire. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.